Hey, bro. We're live.
Awesome. Great to be here.
It's good to meet you.
Yeah.
Good to have you on the roll.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's not super familiar with Polymer, you guys are building an interoperability solution.
Yeah.
Between Cosmos and Ethereum.
Actually, we've kind of shifted focus. Initially, we were targeting just Cosmos and Ethereum. Now we want to be more rollup focused. I guess, good context for the audience. And still targeting Ethereum, but not necessarily like being able to bridge between Cosmos or like IBC native chains or the interchain, whatever you want to call it. Ethereum, its rollups, but also between rollups themselves as well. Like that's kind of going to be a major focus. Yeah.
So kind of taking the technology that was used originally to connect Cosmos and Ethereum and now adapting it so that it's general and flexible enough to kind of like plug in kind of like any network and to any network in a world where there's thousands of rollups, and that seems where we're headed with like app chains. I mean, whether you're a prescriber to like this app chain thesis and you think, we'll scale vertically layer 2, 3, 4, or the modular thesis and you think we'll just kind of like have like little plugins everywhere with different execution environments. Those are all going to be like these kind of like siloed off environments that they take the trade-off of scalability over interoperability by going in this more modular direction. That's kind of what they're prioritizing, scalability on the face of it, and they're losing out on interoperability unless they have a solution that connects like all of these independent rollup worlds.
Yeah.
So maybe could you talk about like kind of what that trade-off means, and then how you're able to almost like have a saving grace for these rollups that have chosen scalability and now they don't have to make that sacrifice?
Yeah, I think so. I guess a lot of people, when they think of IBC, they think of two things. They think of light client header relay, and they think of sovereign app chains or the Cosmos. And I think for a lot of people don't realize that IBC specification is flexible enough for rollups, whether they're settled rollups on Ethereum, whether they're sovereign rollups on a Celestian. Any flavor of rollup can be adapted for using the IBC protocol. And I think Polymer is kind of taking the initiative there to productize the IBC offering of this technology as an interoperability hub for these rollups. Actually, we're targeting Ethereum first. So we're trying to build, Ethereum's first IBC native interoperability hub.
Okay. Why is IBC different than a regular old bridge?
Yeah, so when people think of bridges, and we've kind of done these kind of feature assessments. So we kind of, went down the list of features, looked at all the different solutions. IBC is a messaging protocol. When people think of bridging, they actually think of verification. So like if someone says Wormhole is a bridge or, some other protocol is a bridge, they're thinking of that protocol as a verification layer. When they think of like a ZK bridge, what they're actually talking about is have a ZK proof for verifying the consensus or the execution of this chain, and I'm able to include that. What they're not thinking of is what is the messaging standard that's overlaid on top of this verification layer. And what I mean by like, I've spoken before about like IBC being modular. What I meant by that is the verification is modular. So like how you represent a blockchain from a verification standpoint can be modular. Whereas like IBC establishes a common set of messaging rules, basic features like acknowledgements, timeouts, authentication, and more, and advanced features like relay incentivization, application callbacks, and so on. There's not a lot of competition on the feature front when you look at IBC to all of these other solutions. If you look at a lot of these bridges, they don't have acknowledgement, they don't have timeouts. They don't implement these features on behalf of the user. They mostly just implement some type of verification mechanism.
Okay. And this adapts like bridges, and it's not just the layer that sits on top. It's like kind of like a bottom-up solution that is this new messaging protocol. What kind of applications or use cases like are now available because we're taking transactions that go cross-chain from verification to a more robust form of messaging?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's various application standards on top of IBC already. We have interchain accounts. but then a number of other standards as well. But I think what IBC gets right is the flexibility and application composability. If you build an application on some of these bridges, you don't really have like any guarantees around if I send a message, what if it's doesn't get delivered? Like what happens? A lot of these implementations usually expect that like if I send something, it'll always get delivered. There's no like timeout mechanism. Because usually if you want to transfer some asset, you want to say, I want to initiate a transfer, but if it actually doesn't get there, I need a way to if that makes sense. And you would be able to build it on top of IBC because there's a timeout mechanism. If like hypothetically, if you had a decentralized system with this decentralized incentives, and 9 of the incentives are supplied, so it's like submitting a transaction to Ethereum, but not enough gas. It's time to send them in, well, no one's going to take it up. In that case, at some point, the user is going to want the money back. Be like, oh, well, I sent a transaction, never went through. I want to be resent.
And that's not possible in a bridge, but it is possible with IBC.
Well, you would need timeouts in order to like have that part handled by the messaging protocol, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You can implement that on top of a bridge if you want, but then you're leaving enough to the application to implement timeout semantics on top of the bridging protocol. I feel like when we talk about designing an interoperability protocol, there's like a trade-off spectrum between do you like build very little and let the application build everything themselves, like these like timeout semantics that I'm talking about, or do you build a little bit more that of like these like common features that are, well, I would say like consistent across, I would say like the problem of basic communication across whether it's processes, whether it's chains, like regardless, do you implement these features on behalf of the application? So there's like this trade-off spectrum between implementing too little as a bridge, maybe implementing too much perhaps at some point.
So how do you guys reconcile that kind of trade-off? Like that there's, like you're saying, a healthy balance to strike in between like enshrining, and I've seen Vitalik speak about this too. Like how do you balance how much to enshrine in the protocol versus how much to leave up to the application developers?
Yeah, so so what I like about the IBC approach here is it takes a common set of features. So there's the IBC core or the quote-unquote transport layer, and then these application features. These application features aren't common across every single type of application. Most, like for example, like token transfer is very specific to a token bridge. That application standard you're not going to use if you're doing governance or some other doing some other mechanism. And well, a lot of the Interop protocols I feel like talk about being like TCP/IP. Well, the IBC transport feature set is modeled exactly after TCP/IP. You get the same exact base feature set, if that makes sense.
As a messaging protocol.
Yeah. So like, and both are inspired by the same problem, right? Like both of them inspired by the problem of you have two distant nodes, whether they're blockchains or not. They're two isolated nodes in a network, and they need to be able to communicate asynchronously, where you're not entirely sure if the message will ultimately arrive at the destination or not. And in a blockchain setting, it would be depending on incentives.
Okay. This is how the internet works, right?
It's how the internet works, yeah. So IBC works like the internet works. A lot of other protocols claim to do that, but they do not do that.
Very cool. Do you want to name drop a couple as far as like the ones that claim to do, but they don't?
I don't like to.
No.
Like,
okay.
I think it'd be that. Everyone's work. I think Interop's a hard problem. I'd rather not. Like.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave that out. Cool. So maybe we can dive a little bit deeper, into like, I think what I'm really getting at is like what makes Polymer special relative to all the other interoperability solutions that are out there. I mean, there's so many bridges. There's more and more messaging protocols that are popping up.
Yeah.
What is it that makes Polymer special?
Yeah. So we pivoted a bit, and this isn't, haven't talked about this before, but the idea is that we wanted to take IBC, and we're thinking for a long time about how do we get this.
Dude, I feel an alpha drop coming.
How do we get this technology into Ethereum? And then the initial coaches were like, okay, we'll have this Cosmos chain, implement IBC, we'll form an IBC connection with Ethereum. And then at some point we realized, okay, this IBC connection in and of itself is not enough. So we pivoted from building a sovereign app chain to a rollup. So we've put the Cosmos SDK on top of the OP stack. So we're combining this, Cosmos SDK developer experience with OP stack. We're working on a framework for this as well, but I'll just talk about the interoperability for now. And the idea is that it would be the first interoperability cloud focused on pure connectivity. I know there's a few other approaches that are on Ethereum, but they're not focused purely on connectivity. So I don't necessarily consider them an interop hub from a definition perspective. But the idea is that Polymer itself maintain connectivity to all these Ethereum rollups, act as like the port city. So like there's this article a few years ago, Cosmos Hub is a port city. And that's kind of my mental model for what Polymer is. Polymer is a port city for Ethereum, where all of these different like country, like every role being a country span is just like has this like network of port cities, and Polymer is a port city representing all of them. They connect the Polymer, and the Polymer is able to connect them to each other using IBC semantics with full Ethereum security.
Because it uses Ethereum consensus to settle the transactions that are submitted to Polymer.
Yes, and also in terms of the verification, you're also using, at least in the default case, you're using Ethereum for verification. So a lot of these existing solutions, if you look at the P2P solutions that are available, a lot of them use off-chain, some like third-party variant set for verification. If you look at a lot of the interoperability hub solutions like Axel or Wormhole, it's also a third-party variant set. Polymer is the first interoperability hub. So like it's the first interoperability hub that inherits security directly from Ethereum, not the restatement, directly from Ethereum for settlement onto Ethereum. And it's the first interoperability hub designed specifically for connecting rollups.
And we were upstairs. You were schooling me on based rollups and kind of like the generic rollups.
Yeah.
Is there any differences when it comes to interop between how you guys connect these rollups? Like I'll kind of reframe the definition you gave about base rollups, which is basically that any rollup that uses the L1 to sequence and settle transactions is a base rollup.
Yes.
There's other rollups that may use a shared sequencer. They're still considered rollups, but they're not a based rollup.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when it comes to interop, is the interoperability solution between these rollups the same, or is it, are they all able to inherit Ethereum's consensus for security, or is there a difference between like the based rollups? They're able to inherit consensus because they settle onto Ethereum, but because these other ones use a shared sequencer, maybe they aren't able to inherit the same security principles that a based rollup is able to inherit.
I think we're talking about two different things. So I think the security acceptance, the security of a rollup to me is, there's multiple factors, but first and foremost, you need to be able to verify the state transition of that rollup. And in this optimistic case, there's proof fraud, or ZK proof validity.
So this is what when you say verification, this is something that we've been talking about for since we started here. So when you're saying verification, it's the verification of a state change.
Yeah.
When someone transfers something and there's some change in balances in the array of addresses on Ethereum, there's state A configuration of ETH and all these tokens in different accounts. Yeah. That's a state. Call it state A. Someone makes a transfer. It means that there's one balance goes up, another balance goes down. That's now a new state B. Yep. And there's a verification that takes place to prove that the transition from state A to state B is valid, verifiable.
Yeah.
Okay. So now
that's separate from the sequencing problem. So when we talk about the sequencer, whether you're using the L1, whether you're using a centralized sequencer, whether you're using a shared sequencer, you're talking about a spectrum between like less censorship resistant, which would be using a centralized sequencer, to more censorship resistant, which would be using the L1. Like censorship resistance and like security in my mind are like two different things. Like being able to prove validity and being able to have like be able to prove inclusion or have like have inclusion is two separate things. In terms of connectivity, I would say that for a lot of protocols, you sometimes will default to using the sequencers at a station as like a soft confirmation mechanism. So in my mind, if you were to have a base rollup and I guess compared to like a rollup that uses a centralized or shared sequencer, the soft confirmation mechanism is going to vary. So like the soft confirmer in the base rollup case would be Ethereum itself with L1. The soft confirmation in the shared sequencer case would be the shared sequencer network, which generally is yet another blockchain actually, which is kind of funny. It's all like blockchains all the way down. And in the centralized sequencer model, it would just be whoever's running that sequencer. If it's like Arbitrage run their own sequencer, Optimism run their own sequencer.
It's so funny how like we started out in blockchain, it was all monolithic.
Yeah.
Like a blockchain meant that it had settlement, execution, inclusion, verification, and everything was like built into the NDA, all into this one stack.
Yeah.
And now everything's just like unpacks, like blown out, and like it's been this, say it all the time, but like someone said it now, I can't stop saying it, like this Cambrian explosion, where now it's like all of this different, like there's been so many builders that have came into the space and it's allowed specialization to take place.
Yep.
Ethereum and these alternative layer ones were doing everything, and now we have like specialization. There's a project specifically for DA. There's not just one, there's 4 or 5.
Yeah, and there will be more.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So where do you think, like, kind of like forecasting, you guys have made a couple like expansions. I wouldn't even call them pivots, because it seems like when you guys adapt your technology, it's for the purpose of making the tech more flexible and more general, and it supports more of the ecosystem. So it allows you guys to get like more general, but also more specialized in the sense, which I think is very powerful. So as we kind of like continue to see kind of like this proliferation and like more and more blowout of the industry, like what do you think happens? Like, what do you think? Well, how do you think this impacts like new development that takes place on top of like the infrastructure as we see it today?
Yeah, so I think honestly the most important thing to me, and the reason why we're working on this following, is to help the industry scale. I think the industry will hit scaling bottlenecks in terms of the technology when there's too much fragmentation. Because with this Cambrian explosion, you get all flavors of different things. What that means is that if you don't have a unified API to access everything, which is how I see IBC. I see IBC as a unified API. It abstracts away all like the complexities of, like, is it a base rollup? Does it use a shared sequencer? Does that use a centralized sequencer? Is it using like off-chain D8? And then Sriram recently talked about using like a separate finality layer. And it's like, okay, now you inherit reorg resistance from yet another layer, DA from another layer, validity from another layer. Like, you just keep breaking these components up. But at the end of the day, like the downstream, maybe whether they're like a centralized entity, like a bank or a centralized custodian, whether there's some sort of application that's trying to build on top of this technology, having this consistent API across essentially the entire decentralized web, which I think that should be IBC, it is incredibly important for them to have development velocity and for them to be able to build things that they don't need to, like, on a per chain basis. With a Cambrian influenced chains, you're going to have to maintain like 10,000 different integrations that are like different in many different ways. Like, how does that scalable? It's not really. It's just going to limit the growth of the industry.
Exactly, and that I think in a nutshell puts the problem statement like very clearly.
Yeah. Because
like we have this Cambrian explosion, it's leading to all the specialization. Yeah. But now everything is in a million different pieces.
Yep.
It's so fragmented, and we almost like without interoperability to connect all those pieces, they're going to continue to exist. We're not going to have connectivity and the same sort of user experience or development experience as we might have in a monolithic chain.
Yes.
That's where you guys come in, is like to connect all of these pieces together so that there is still a seamless experience despite having 1,000 different specialized solutions.
Yeah. And then what I'll also say about this is there are efforts, by different ecosystems to come to standards, but a lot of these standards are at the application level. Application level standards are great. Like having a standard for like, cross-chain token, that's great. But developers need a standard API to build on top of. Application standards in and of themselves, like, are specialized to like a specific application. We need like a lower level API that's consistent, which is like how the web works. If you want to talk a little bit, most of the web speaks TCP IP. So if you're able to speak that, then you can connect to the rest of the internet. You can implement one API and you're interfaceable with the rest of the internet without having to deal with like a million different private networks. And if we keep going down the path that we're going down currently without some sort of consolidation, we're getting into a world with a ton of fragmentation, a ton of private networks, where beneath, like, maybe this would come a set of like application standards. But beneath the application standard, there's like 15 different like developer APIs for the same thing.
Yeah.
And all of them is going to implement things in a different way. They're going to behave differently. So like, depending on, even if you like aggregate a message over like 15 different bridges, they all behave differently. What are the actual guarantees? It's the minimum of everything.
Yeah, because the weakest link is going to be your security fault point.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I like about IBC as well, is that contrary to like existing standards, and I see a lot of standards where you try to abstract over like many different bridges with an application standard or like a token standard. I think it's okay. I think you can build something like that, but IBC has a property of fault isolation. So in this like modular security world where like, you have say like a fast path using like the sequencer for a solid confirmation. You have a slow path where you're waiting out the full fraud window. You're proving DA. You're proving the wait period as attested to by Sunchain. You're proving these things, and you want to abstract over them. You want to say that, okay, a token transferred over the fast path is actually just not as secure as a token transferred over the slow path. Token transferred over the slow path is almost guaranteed to be fine. Like there's very little risk. So like if someone is transferring a lot, or like the asset is very valuable, maybe you want to like go with the slow path. With a fast path, you might use that for maybe not a token transfer, maybe like a governance portfolio or something. And I think it's really important to have fault isolation over each of these. And I think that's something that IBC gets right.
Okay, so when you say fault isolation,
yes.
So you isolate the risks or the faults, the potential security vulnerabilities of the slow path, and isolate those to the slow path. But a better example is fast path because it has more fault vulnerability potential.
Yeah.
So you want to isolate that to only the fast path so that the slow path, the people who prioritize safety and security, are not impacted by the potential risks of the fast path.
Yes. And so I'd say this last property, a lot of people understand connections and channels. Like they hear the names, they don't have no idea what they mean. The way I think of it is when you have a connection that establishes some security primitive. This connection is secured by X. What is it secured by? It's secured by a 7-day optimistic fraud window. Okay, that's one statement. You can have another connection that's secured by the sequencer signature, obviously a lot weaker.
Right.
And these connections can be reused across any number of channels. The channel is established on a per application basis. So you can establish a token transfer channel over the slow path. You can establish like just like a governance application center. You can establish that over the fast path. You can establish these like multiple times, and the same path can be used by multiple application centers. So when you establish an application center, it means that like nothing but that application center can traverse over that channel. So the data flow, and I think of them as like highways in a sense. So like a connection is the highway. So maybe the slow path is the very secure highway, like, and then the fast path is maybe like slightly like it's a nice highway, but maybe the construction is not the best, and maybe it'll fall apart at some point. You have all these like little lanes, these channels that are formed across these highways. If you're getting my analogy here. And for each of these channels, they can be doing separate things, but they don't overlap. Like you can't go from one channel to the other.
You can't cross lane.
Yeah. So the fault isolation at the connection level, this fault isolation at the channel level. So it's a very I'll say like thought-through design that maps really well to the modular world, when like every single one of these paths can actually behave differently, has different prints.
Wow. Almost like modular interoperability.
Yes, modular interoperability.
Yeah. Which is something that I'm coming to realize now is like not. When we think about modular, it's like, okay, it's these modules. But when we think about the connection, there's like so many protocols that are like, they've been in nexus, where they try to like connect everything, and it's model, and it's like everything is connected into this one thing, and it's the nexus of everything, right? And it's like you have all these modules, and then they all plug into this nexus, or this, like, use the term port city. They're like, as we think through this model, is port city still applicable? Like, I don't want to like come at the analogy of that, but like it sounds more like there's these channels, and between these modules they have interoperability between those, and that is it's like a direct path in between them. It's not like you got to go into this port city and then you got to hop back out to the yellow. Is that a fair way to think?
actually, my myth was a little bit different. So Polymer is a port city. Polymer will sit maybe like Ethereum is a country, and Ethereum rollups or cities. Maybe not a perfect analogy, but like you kind of give my tip when I talk about this. So Polymer establishes like the underlying infrastructure that these trade routes or established over. So like Polymer itself isn't like there's no application of Polymer. Polymer is only establishing kind of like the physical infrastructure, like the supply chain infrastructure that enables trade flow over between like these cities on distant continents or countries. Okay. That makes sense.
So when you say port city, it's like port city in general. It's not like one particular port city where everything flows like through the Panama Canal. It's like, no, like Panama Canal is an example of a port city. There's port city there. There's a port city in Gibraltar, like in Indonesia. There's a whole bunch of port cities out there, and developers and users can flow through these port cities, and more specifically, builders can use Polymer to build a port city, to connect a modular world over here and a modular world over there. They can build a canal using Polymer. It's like Polymer is like if you want to call it a highway, Polymer is cement. If you want to call it a channel, Polymer is like the waterway, like a man-made, like you're like a canal service that'll dig out a canal so that a channel is now full.
Yeah, that's correct. Like Polymer is permissionless, IBC is permissionless, and Polymer is permissionless. What you're able to do is that depending on, as we talk about like abstracting away the different parts of the modular blockchain world, you're able to build these clients, and IBC client is arbitrary. It can represent any sort of blockchain or any like number of blockchains. For example, like you got like 4 different clients representing the 4 parts of a blockchain, combine them together using some logic or conditional client, and deploy that onto Polymer, and Polymer can establish these kind of ways. Anyone can do this. Like anyone can come into Polymer, create a client, create a connection, create a channel. It's completely permission.
Very cool. I think that is a massive point of adoption, because ultimately, like we reach like a bottleneck in our service, like when we're limited to ourselves and the service that our team can provide. Permissionlessness means it is essentially instant adoption at like just a much quicker pace, and like there's no limit on the amount of acceleration that adoption can move at, because it's not bottlenecked by like a certain team. Teams can go, they can adopt it, it can scale limitlessly.
Yes. And the other thing that I would like to emphasize here is that like using, so you go back to the port city analogy. So using this port city analogy, if Polymer sits in this country, Polymer inherits security from that country. So like, because we're building a rollup, we're building Polymer as an interoperability hub that's settling onto Ethereum. Polymer is part of the Ethereum country, and the country is defending its borders, and therefore Polymer is secured by porters. So when you're connecting inwards, if you connect to Polymer, then you're connecting with Ethereum security, versus like if you were to connect using some third-party guardian set, this is like you're relying on some like random company.
Relying on the world, what is it? The humane, dude, I have the World Health Organization or something. And they're like,
you rely on some neutral third party. But like, do you rely on the security of the neutral third party? If something happens, it's not like that country stepping in and say, "Okay, you attacked like our city, like you bombed our port city. Like we're going to take some action on this." Versus like, oh yeah, this like neutral organization, like maybe like the plane got lost, the ship sank, and like everyone else kind of throws their hands up and it's like, yeah, they don't really have military or anything. The military being security. They don't really have the military, so like we'll.
Yeah, dude, and then this is where the fault isolation comes in, because like military is going to defend its borders, and like Polymer is the highway between like Canada and America, and you're not relying on like the World Health Organization to like protect like Canada and America. You're relying on like Canada and America to protect like its borders and protect its highway. Like you're relying on, like if it's the OP stack, you're relying on base and optimism to like protect the interoperability between Base and Optimism. You're not relying on Ethereum at like the L1 level or is that?
No, you're relying on Ethereum.
You're relying on Ethereum.
Yeah, you're relying on Ethereum because Ethereum is the most secure.
Yeah.
The Optimism based, great company.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how, like, where does when it's two chains that interact based on Ethereum?
I actually see. So I see Base and Optimism as kind of like cities.
Okay, on the in the Ethereum country.
So like if Ethereum is a settlement layer, like Ethereum can be essentially like the country. It has the military, which is the state. The rollups built on top are the cities.
Okay, yeah.
So like in the Cosmos model, this was a little different. Cosmos model was like independent, like city states.
Right.
So like each city state has its own state, its own military, it can defend its borders. And in this case, the Ethereum is the country, and which has the military, and the cities can inherit the security from the country itself. For this, yeah. The same way Polymer inherits it.
Yeah. Great. Wow, this is like one of my favorite conversations when we're talking about mental models and like analogies, like they fall apart and then they come back together because like you kind of like there's like another new layer of nuance that like comes into play. Dude, this has been great. Like, is there? I mean, I'm sure we could go for like
we could go
much longer. But like, is there anything else that you, like you feel like you wanted to touch more on, you wanted to talk more about, or like, maybe we touched on, we didn't get a chance to like really dive deep. Is there?
Yeah. So the one thing I always touch on, talk about at the beginning of the interview is since we're putting the Cosmos Etsy account LP stack, I wanted to emphasize that we're looking to enable builders to build a network of rollups, natively interoperable rollups on top of Ethereum, and not just that. I think this is not anything negative about the existing rollup frameworks on Ethereum, but the level of developer UX, the level of customization isn't at the same level of the Cosmos SDK today. It will change in the future, but we can accelerate that. So we can accelerate that by just bringing the dev UX, the native interoperability, the existing modules that are already built, the existing docs, the existing developer community. But we can bring that into the OP stack, which has this settlement logic, which is great, which just allows the chain builders to start building Ethereum rollups and security from Ethereum. And we feel that will greatly accelerate the pace of these like app rollups. So the existing rollups on Ethereum, I don't really consider them app rollups. Just because you deploy yet another EVM or OPJet rollup on Ethereum and you deploy like a few smart contracts on it, that to me isn't really like is it a chain optimized for an application? No, it's some smart contracts deployed in the EVM on another rollup. Like it's not purely optimized for some specific application. There's some like limited flexibility there in terms of the efficiency. So I think with the Cosmos, it's going to be people have a lot more flexibility to build. And with Polymer as this like Ethereum secured highway that both it's both an internal highway and a port city. So it has all the highways leading to all the major cities, all the major routes. Train tracks, like major highways, like sea routes internally, and then externally it has like boats, like shipping lanes into all these other countries and continents, like the Cosmos, the interchain, and more.
Very cool. Wow, my mind is blown. Yeah, it's such an expansive network. And it's also one that it will help to accelerate the adoption of these app chains, or these rollups, whatever you want to call them. Like, if these applications would exist independent of all these other chains, what do they say when you want to go fast? You build on your own, right? So yes, they'd be fast, they'd be very scalable. Yeah. But when you want to go far, you build together. And I think if they are not plugged in and together with all of the other ecosystems that exist in blockchain, on chain, they would lose out, and they would not go as far because they wouldn't get access to the same liquidity, the same users that exist on every other chain.
Yeah. So like what I see with like the vision for this framework, and we're calling it Polymer. So Polymer is formed of like many monomers like combined.
Okay, yeah. So like Port City, like specifically is monomer, and then they make up like this polymer.
The port city is polymer.
Okay,
Port city is polymer. Monomer creates the individual cities that are connected.
okay.
So like a bunch of cities together are connected. Like yeah,
Polymer is the set of monomers.
yeah, there's a set of monomers.
Okay.
And the idea there is there's a graduation path. So you start as an application of Ethereum, you find product market fit, but your users and liquidity, most of them are selling Ethereum. So for efficiency, you graduate into an app rollup, and you get to build out with water SDK. And at some point, you become so prosperous that like, actually a lot of our, people in like business and economy is actually can be independent of this country now. So we're going to graduate into a sovereign app chain or like a sovereign city state, essentially. And there's like a migration path between app rollup, app chain, and also back. App chain to app rollup to app on Ethereum is a little trickier because we're all the SDK, but like there's a migration path between like app rollup and app chain and back.
This is the journey of DYDX.
Yeah. They skipped the app rollup part. Well, I guess they did the app rollup on Let's Start That.
No,
I thought they were on Start.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is it StartNet or Cosmos?
No, before Cosmos.
Oh, before now DYDX is on Cosmos.
Yeah, now they're on Cosmos.
Did they have that in between stage where they were StartNet?
Yeah, I think they were on Ethereum, and then they did some period of time where they were on StartNet. It was one of the rollups, but I think it was StartNet, and then now they're on Cosmos.
Whoa. And this is the journey. So like an application like DYDX, what is like the path for them to connect? Let's say, they want to connect and bring liquidity and users and have all this interoperability with all these other rollups. What is the path of like, what is an integration? Oh, that's like, let's say I'm at DYDX, right? Like what, and that's my goal.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, the connecting DYDX connecting to Ethereum to Polymer is much more secure than using any other hub. And the reason for that is because every other hub puts some middleman in the middle. Essentially, you rely on the work hub organization. But in the Polymer case, you're relying on Ethereum security. So it's direct connectivity from the Ethereum side and DYDX. DYDX is our chain. You're actually connecting directly to Ethereum. Because we're a Cosmos SDK chain or a Cosmos SDK rollup, we have direct IBC connectivity. So existing IBC relayers can connect, can set up a connection between DYDX. This is caveats here. DYDX needs an Ethereum client and there's some other things, but like caveats aside and like implementation details aside, a relay could just set up an IBC connection directly essentially from DYDX to Ethereum and then to Polymer. And then from Polymer's already connected to all these rollups. And then now you can establish a token transfer channel, whatever kind of application transfer that you want, application channel that you want over Polymer to any of the rollups in the Ethereum rollup ecosystem. There's direct connectivity, Ethereum security, native IBC interoperability.
DYDX, if you're listening, this is Bo. Go talk to him and get deeper security and connect to Ethereum.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Show your Twitter and like website and where people should hit you up.
Yeah. My Twitter is 00xshit. We're Polymer_labs. On Twitter, polymerlabs.org. On either well.
Cheers, one.
Yeah.